Right. Okay. Great. Okay. Now we have the keynote speech of the second day. Thank you very much also for coming here, the attendees. I hope we have more, and also Mrs. Professor Phoebe Koundouri, that is our guest today. I would just like just to give a short intro about Professor Koundouri. Professor Koundouri holds a PhD and MPhil in economics in econometrics in the University of Cambridge, and she's now a professor of economics and econometrics in the School of Athens of Economics in the Athens University of Economics and Business. She's also the elected president of the European Association of Environment and Natural Resource Economics. That's a very prestigious association with more than 1,200 scientific member institutions. Phoebe is also listed one of the most cited women economists in the world, and in the male-dominant economist world, I have to say. And she's the co-chair of the UN Sustainable Development Network that also Nazarbayev University, as some of you know, tries to get in. And Phoebe in the past has held academic positions at the University of Cambridge, UCL, and Reading as well, and the LSE. And she has held since '97 many interdisciplinary research projects and given keynote and public lectures all over the world. One of these is to us, and great thanks for this, Phoebe, and for this presentation on sustainability transition in Europe. For the next 30 minutes, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefane. It's always a pleasure working with you and your university. And I truly believe that working together, we can mobilize the sustainability transition in Central Asia, as well as in other parts of the world. I want to thank GSPP for the invitation. And I will start with my contribution. So today I want to speak about the sustainability transition in Europe, which I consider as a leadership example that can be followed all around the world. And I will explain why I consider that to be the case. I will try to put together all the existing policies that can that showcase a top-down approach to mobilizing the sustainability transition. And in particular, I speak about the sustainable development goals of Agenda 2030 of the United Nations, the European Green Deal, the enhanced EU multi-annual financial framework, and the associated recovery plan. And I will try to explain how these policies can be put together in a common framework in order to mobilize a transition to sustainability, but at the same time create jobs and allow for a just transition that is inclusive and leaves no one behind. Nowadays, I start all my speakers with this sketch, which shows the three big tsunamis that we are simultaneously facing. We are facing COVID pandemic, of course, which is a health pandemic, and we try to control it by various measures like wearing masks, lockdowns, mass testing, and also by focusing on biomedical research towards an efficient vaccine. However, this pandemic is not just a health problem that is causing lives, it's also causing a huge economic recession that it is quite challenging for the whole of the world because it leaves no country outside of the picture of a huge recession. With this pandemic, we risk the possibility of the actual coronavirus turning into the effects of the coronavirus turning into a major economic and financial crisis that will long outlast the health crisis. So we need to take immediate measures. What are the immediate measures? Keep people employed. channel financial support to the public and private institutions that support vulnerable citizens, safeguard the SMEs against bankruptcy, support of the financial system as non-performing loans will mount, and create fiscal packages comparable to the crisis-related loss in GDP in order to reboot the economy. Of course, these fiscal packages will be financed by national debt. And we know from the previous national debt crisis that in general, worldwide, we don't have very good instruments to face national debt crisis. So again, we are moving towards a very difficult economic, social, and health situation. And of course, the third big tsunami that encompasses all of it, and we've been warning about it for more than 2-3 decades, is climate change. We are facing a climate emergency, and it is important to understand that this current pandemic might be deriving from the unsustainable use, unsustainable interaction between humans, people, and nature. There is a lot of scientific speculation pointing to the fact that the loss of biodiversity and deforestation has brought wildlife and humans very close. And this closeness makes the probability of a virus being transferred from wildlife to humans much easier. And we've seen many viruses coming from many zoonotic viruses creating endemics the last years. H1N1, the birds flu, HIV, SARS, and so on. So it is important not just to get the economy rebooted, but get it rebooted in a way that it's sustainable and resilient, recognizing the fact that the interaction between humans and nature is one crucial element in our ability to sustainably live in this planet. And this interaction between humans and nature should be, it gives the framework, the backbone in which our economy and society works, and we cannot leave it outside any attempts to recover from the pandemic. The climate emergency, as I'm sure you all know, is the urgency of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, beyond which the risk of extreme weather events and poverty for hundreds of millions of people will significantly increase. At the moment, there is no country on earth that is not experiencing drastic effects of climate change in terms of annual average economic losses and in terms of geophysical disasters that are causing the lives of millions of people. For this reason, the European Union, the European Commission announced its European Green Deal, and one of the main axes of this deal is carbon neutrality by 2050. Lately, the latest, the 2019 UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program emissions gas report has identified that in order to reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius maximum increase in global temperature, we need to achieve a reduction of 68% of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. This is a huge goal, and it is a target that is not yet included in any policy. In less than a month ago, the President of the European Commission proposed an increase of carbon and other greenhouse gas emissions reductions from 40% to 55%, to at least 55%. And the whole of Europe was celebrating. 55% is a huge increase compared to the 40%, but once again, it's not enough in order to keep the increase in temperature less than 1.5 degrees Celsius. And beyond that, we are, as I said before, in a very risky territory of extreme poverty, costing lives of people due to extreme weather events and climate change. Now, let me try to summarize the recent history of sustainability policy framework. These are the top-down approaches that are there, that have been endorsed by countries in order to face the climate crisis and face and create a framework towards the sustainability transition in which all countries can develop in a way that is climate resilient, it's socially resilient, and it's economically efficient. 2015, New York, September, 190 countries signed the 17 SDGs. These SDGs are about people, the planet, and prosperity. So it's about the economy, the natural resources, and the society interacting in a way that is sustainable and resilient. Since its enactment, the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network, that I am honored to chair the National Hub of Greece and work quite a lot with the New York headquarters, and also work with the SDSN Hub of York University. Since then, as UNSDSN, we issue the UN SDSN dashboard and index that shows for every year the progress of each and every country with regards to implementing each of the 17 goals. These goals include 169 targets, and each of the targets is assessed against very specific indicators. So we have a quantitative assessment of the progress of each country with regards to implementing these goals. Then a few months later, after New York, we go to Paris, and 197 countries signed the Paris Agreement, which indicated that we will, all the countries in the world, will try to limit the increase in temperature, in global temperature, to below 2 degrees Celsius. 2018, the IPCC report on global warming explicitly said that 2 degrees is not good enough. We have to limit the increase in temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which implies zero net emissions globally by 2050. 2019, again, the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network releases the report on the 6 major transformation to achieve the SDGs. What is this? This is an operationalization of the 17 SDGs into 6 transformations: health, education, decarbonization, sustainable food, land, water, and oceans management, sustainable cities and communities, and the digital revolution to mobilizing sustainable development. These pathways, these transformations are quite helpful because they operationalize the 17 SDGs, and they also correspond to the way most governments are organized. So it's a way of helping governments to implement the SDGs, which I need to confess that having 17 different goals it is a big challenge. Whereas when you have 6 transformation, it's more focused and it's more consistent with the actual structure of the governments. 2019, we have the European Green Deal. So although the Agenda 2030 is the only global agenda at the moment, together with the Charter of Human Rights of the UN, in Europe we have another agenda which is completely consistent with the SDGs, and it's our European Green Deal. It has 4 axes: 2050 carbon neutrality, reduction of pollution, protection of biodiversity and human health, climate tech, clean tech leadership in Europe, and just transition, leave no one behind. And this European Green Deal is supported with 1 trillion budget, half of it coming from EU budget and the emissions trading systems income, and the other half to be mobilized by public-private partnerships. It is important, hence, to understand that the role of the private sector is crucial in this transition. It's not something that the public sector can do on its own. And of course, 2020, early 2020, we have the pandemic of COVID-19. And as I said before, flattening the infection curve steepens the macroeconomic recession curve. And for this reason, many countries around the world and many multilateral institutions have created a recovery and resilience funds. And Europe has created its own with 750 billion to be given as loans or grants for different countries to implement projects for the recovery of the economy. The recovery of the economy should happen, but the idea is to build back better, build back in a way that is climate resilient, that is inclusive and just, and that creates jobs. And there is a commitment that all projects that will be funded by the Recovery and Resilience Fund will be climate mainstream and digital mainstream. 35% of the budget of the Recovery Fund should be climate mainstream, should be focused on climate adaptation and climate mitigation. And this is exactly how we work in this big European Green Deal project that I lead together with Professor Sachs and in collaboration with many international institutions like NF Foundation, Fondazione Enrico Mattei, the International Energy Agency, University College London, University of Rome, and many others. We try to identify transformations, pathways for mobilizing a resilient and sustainable recovery using the 6 transformations and trying for the joint implementation of the SDGs and the European Green Deal. The European Green Deal has 9 different policies focusing on biodiversity, farm-to-fork, sustainable agriculture, clean energy, sustainable industry, building and renovating, sustainable mobility, eliminating pollution, and climate action. And the idea is to identify the joint implementation of these policies together with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and together with the priorities of the Next Generation EU Recovery and Resilience Fund, and also merge all these with the European Semester Process recommendations. The European Semester Process recommendations identify, it's the European Commission telling member states that you need to do better in 1, 2, 3, 4 areas. And we show that the European Semester Process recommendations are aligned with SDG achievement process as they are measured by the dashboard and index that we publish as UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. And in addition to this, we bring into the picture the European Green Deal policies and identify how they can be implemented by constructing technological pathways together with policy pathways, and at the same time constructing the financial portfolios that will fund these pathways, will support these pathways. These financial portfolios derive from the European Green Deal budget, the EU Recovery and Resilience Fund, and the enhanced multi-annual financial framework. And together with these investment pathways, we also identify the job creation potential of these pathways, and also identify the need for these pathways to be just, to be inclusive, which means reskilling and re-educating your workforce in order to be able to take part in this transition, which is mainly a technological transition. So you need to create the capacity in your labor force to be able to be included in this technological transition. And you will see in this graph that we need an additional 315 billion per year in order to move from the current national energy and climate plans to a 55% target. This is, again, a very big challenge. And within Europe, you can see that we have a lot of variety in terms of commitment to phasing out coal. We have countries that are coal-free already, some that have committed to phasing out coal, some that are considering coal phase out, and some that do not even plan to phase out yet. Now, in addition to climate mitigation, which is phasing out coal, there is a second way. So an additional aspect of this sustainability transition, which is climate change adaptation. Adaptation programs like early warning systems, making infrastructure resilience, improving dryland agriculture, and so on, generate a triple dividend. They avoid losses due to climate change, they create economic benefits from the investment programs, and they create social and environmental benefits. And this is why one of my team's major projects called Brigade, it was a Horizon 2020 research project that turned into an international company which identifies different climate change adaptation startups and innovations and accelerates them into the market in order to offer their services in the climate change adaptation arena. Another angle for mobilizing the sustainability transition, in addition to climate mitigation and climate adaptation, is the transition to circular economy, changing the model in which we used to produce to a circular model that produces no waste, and that it changes the way it uses raw material, the way it designs the production processes, the way it distributes, consumes, collects, and recycles. It's crucial because it saves more than 600 billion euro for EU business, and this is just the EU. The numbers for the globe are much bigger. It creates more than 500 million jobs in Europe. It reduces the carbon footprint, it reduces the environmental footprint, and it creates an excellent opportunity for public-private partnerships. So it's climate mitigation, climate adaptation, the transition to circular economy. I should say at this point that climate mitigation, it's a good point in time to achieve that because renewables are becoming much cheaper now, competitive to fossil fuels. Our technology with regards to storage of renewables is much more efficient, and we have acceleration of storage installations around the globe. And in addition to that, we have a huge potential for improving the energy efficiency of the buildings around the world. So mitigation, adaptation, the transition to the circular economy, and of course, advancing the technological pathways is crucial. This is a technologically led revolution, and we should be clear about that. And on the 17th of September, the European Commission announced the annual sustainable strategy, and it identified the technological flagships: power up, renovate, recharge and refuel, connect, modernize, scale up, and of course, reskill and upskill. I want to focus on this reskill and upskill because it is crucial. We are through the fourth industrial revolution. Technological advancements are on a very fast pace. Never before in the history of humankind we had such a pace. So it will be a challenge to keep the workforce up to date with this technological revolution. So this transition has to be inclusive, and inclusiveness means reskilling and updating the workforce. And of course, all this has to happen in an efficient, equitable, and sustainable way. And sustainable and responsible finance will be crucial. It is important to follow EU taxonomy, and I hope for similar taxonomies to happen around the world, because they identify explicitly which are the sustainable projects, so you can really focus on those to finance those. And one efficient instruments of financing are green bonds, transition bonds, or sustainability bonds. These are bonds earmarked to achieving a particular sustainability goal. Our results will be disseminated to member state politicians and decision makers, and the idea is to give them guidance on how to spend their recovery funds and what is interesting in terms of cross-country alliances for a sustainable recovery. And in addition, it helps them identify profitable public-private partnerships, profitable in terms of financial profit, but also in terms of increasing social welfare and social resilience. And at the end of the day, we want to create a climate pact manifesto to engage all the politicians, policymakers, but also business, the financial sector, and the civil society. And I will come back very briefly on how we can engage them in a very systematic approach. Before showing how we can do the bottom-up approach, let me refer briefly to the Landsat Commission. This is a World Commission on COVID-19 and engages global leaders to promote best practices in the control of the pandemic. And I am honored to call it the Task Force on Job-Based Green Recovery. The first statement that we issued on the occasion of the 75th Assembly of the UN, I explicitly identified that we need a recovery that is consistent with the Paris Climate Agreement and the SDGs, that this recovery needs to be made by the public investment, infrastructural investment that will spur complementary private investment, and that we need to commit to reskilling and upskilling people, exactly because we have this fast-paced technological advancement. And of course, we gave the European Green Deal as a good leadership example for doing that. What is important is that this top-down mobilization is not just happening in Greece, in Europe. South Korea has signed its Green Deal in July. Canada has a pact for a Green New Deal. Israel has committed to a green recovery. The US Democrat president has committed to infrastructural green recovery, mainly focusing on the infrastructural investment. And what is important, China has committed to 2060 climate neutrality. So we have all this policy mobilization. We also need bottom-up mobilization. We need a climate pact. We need a pact with all the stakeholders that are relevant, the civil society, the business, the policy makers, the NGOs, the technology developers, all the people. The European Commission has this pact. I wrote an opinion on how it should be implemented, and I propose systems innovation approach, where we try to transform the whole system towards an inclusive co-design of the future vision that we all commit to, where we want to be by 2050, and then come back to today and co-develop with all relevant stakeholders the pathways towards our common vision. I will use the last 2 minutes to introduce the cluster for sustainability transition that I direct. This has many European projects, hundreds of European projects, but also projects around the world that try to mobilize sustainability transition. We work in 3 layers: research and innovation, which are mainly big pan-European and world projects on interdisciplinary research for mobilizing the sustainability transition. Then we have deep demonstration pilot projects, and we also run an innovation accelerator, a startup accelerator, in order to increase the pace of climate mitigation and adaptation startups that are in the market. As Climate Kick Europe, we have already accelerated more than 1,000 startups towards these aims. And of course, we also work in the education and training and upskilling and reskilling. As a professor at the university, we run undergraduate courses and master courses, but we also run professional courses that are virtual, so you can all participate on the implementation of the European Green Deal, the SDGs, and the Recovery Fund. We also run learning hubs with virtual reality, where we try to educate innovators and entrepreneurs in the sustainability transition and in thinking in a long-run framework. We have many projects on circular economy and climate change, and our idea is not just recycle and upscale recycling, but invest in creating products that do not produce waste. We also have another big area on blue growth and sustainable shipping and ports. We run a global initiative on sustainable shipping and ports, bringing all the stakeholders in order to create pathways for a sustainable shipping and ports community by 2050. We also started working on the 4 Seas initiative for blue growth in the Mediterranean, Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, and the Aral Sea, and this is something that we want to work with the Central Asia quite a lot. And we also run many projects on water, food, energy nexus, and smart agriculture that is quite important to show the way on how to use water and land sustainably, and embrace the digital revolution towards this sustainability mobilization. Here I just show the 9 startups that we are accelerating this year as EIT Climate Kick Greece that I direct, and these are startups with various focus, one on hydrogen, one on recycling marine plastic, one on sustainable waste management, one on sustainable shipping, and so on. I close by saying that we don't only accelerate startups, but we try to bring the venture capital world closer to the startups in order to enhance the funding they have available, and in this way expand their potential for helping in this sustainability transition. And we also try to help in big initiatives like the EARN Fund initiative. I'm part of the board of this initiative, a US and Greece initiative, in order to empower countries to meet and exceed their national climate, clean energy, and sustainability goals. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right, Phoebe. Wow, that was a great inspiration of what's going on in the European front. That we're a bit far from there, although we're in the Eurasia, let's say, continent somehow. And that was very inspiring that you saw that against the trends that goes. I mean, as you mentioned, the challenges of the climate change, of the coronavirus, and the crisis, we try somehow to combat, especially for the European front, with a lot of investments, technological spin-offs. And personally, you have got all these ways of the startups, and you help people, I mean, getting on the employability. That's very important. And I hope eventually, but this is another talk that we'll get also to the SDSN, and we'll manage to collaborate more closer as institutions, but also within our universities and the schools. I just like to ask you, we have like a few minutes. My just question on related to Central Asia a bit is that there is a lot of talk that, you know, the money that they're getting on combating coronavirus, they are somehow getting probably against the environmental protection. So they try, you know, to warm up the economy, but probably will not take care much of the environment. This is the one thing. And the second thing I'd like to ask you is that you talk about decarbonization, and you saw the very nice graph in Europe. And you know that in Central Asia, they are still a bit transition economies, and they are still relying on carbon. How would you see this kind of transition going over in this part of the world?
Yes, with regards to recovery fund and how it is, you have to face immediate crisis. It is very difficult to engage in the response long-run objectives. So even in non-transition economies, it is a big challenge to be able to keep the labor force employed, and at the same time try to convince the companies that are keeping the labor force employed make the transition to sustainability now that they are facing bankruptcy. What we want to do is not to work with the already converted, with the green companies. We want to recover, but we want to engage in this recovery, the non-converted. How can it be done in such a crisis? Well, you can say, I will support you, but now that I'm giving you this new money, I want you to commit that you will slowly but consistently develop a pathway for the sustainability transition. And I will support you in developing this pathway in a way that will be profitable for you, because there is such a way that it will be profitable for you. It will allow you to keep your labor force employed, but you need to invest in reskilling, and it will be consistent with all the forthcoming policies and existing policies, which might allow you better access to finance. So what we need to do now, and it is good not to wait this crisis. Don't waste a crisis. Don't waste a good crisis. Come in, help all the vulnerable, but while giving the money, make them commit to working with those who know into developing sustainability pathways that are going to be supported with financial resources that are going to come from national debt mainly, that are going to be supported with reskilling, that it will be provided mainly by public but also private institutions. And at the end of the day, this is it should become explicit to them that it's much easier to do this now that all these policies for the sustainability transition are in place. They become policy consistent, law consistent, and at the same time, they don't risk their financial profitability, and they keep the labor force in place. Now, with regards to climate mitigation and the economies in transition, the good news is that renewables are becoming cheaper, and they are competitive to fossil fuel. And we also have the technology for storage, and we have the technology for the correct grid. We have all that. What the economies in transition need, and also the developed countries, but less so, is infrastructural investments. And now with the coronavirus, where you have these recovery funds, it is important, if we are going to succeed, the governments to use all this money that are coming for infrastructural investments that will allow green, that is, invest in grids, invest in renewable energies, invest in e-mobility, and by making these big infrastructural investments, you reboot the economy, you create jobs, the job creation capacity of the green revolution is huge. It's huge. It's 10 times the job creation capacity of the status quo. And at the same time, create such stability in the economy that will mobilize the private sector to come in and make real investments. One of the biggest problems of the world at the moment, even before the coronavirus, is that nobody made any real investments because the uncertainty was so big. So this is an opportunity for showing areas where real investments are going to be really profitable, because they are going to be consistent with the law and the global goals. The problem is what you do with the fossil fuel ecosystem, with the people that work there. There you need a very consistent, a very serious, just transition. So you work with this community in order to reskill them, upskill them, provide them with the infrastructure they need as public governments, and keep them all in a transition process from the fuel to the grid. It's not easy, but this is the idea of the European Green Deal. This is the idea that we try to mobilize through the Landsat Commission, and this is the only way it can be done. And I'm hopeful because the financial system and the big funds are now looking towards that direction.
Thank you very much, Phoebe. And we just have one more question, just we close after that. So from Ms. Jennings, and I think you already responded to that about the green finance and how policymakers engage private sector. I think we already responded to that. The other is that there is a kind of doubt that she mentions about the deglobalization period, that some people say that we're going back to the national economies, again, the tariffs, and we have, again, like restrictions, and how European Union could help the less developed countries, you know, to overcome these kind of hurdles.
To be honest, if with this issue of going back to nationalization is one crucial threat, I would say, because if we need something these days, is more globalization rather than less globalization, and more solidarity rather than less solidarity. The pandemic is harsh on the vulnerable, is harsh on the developing economies, on the economies that are in transition, and we need to show solidarity. I understand that at the moment, what has been announced from the European Commission, from the US, and refers to help to the developing world is really almost embarrassing. It's nothing. This is where the multilateral institutions and the UN and the European Commission have to work more, because it is not just to the benefit of the developing world to be able to recover in a resilient way. It is the benefit for the whole of the world, because we are at the state of globalization. Although we've got this shock of the pandemic and we are thinking of shortening our supplies chain, if this shortening happens, the restructuring that needs to take place is so huge, and we don't know if it will be successful and will be a huge impact on the economies of the developed world, that I don't think this is the way to go. The way to go is to invest on rebooting our globalized framework, like we had it before, but rebooting it in a better way, in a more resilient way. And in order to do this, the developed world needs to show solidarity to the developing world. And this is a crucial comment, and I thank for it, because at the moment it's really embarrassing what we are not doing for the developing world. And I will close with that.
Yeah. Thanks, Phoebe. I think we keep the positive things that you mentioned already, because there were many, and the way forward that the European Union is moving on. And with this, I'd like to thank you one more for having you here, and looking forward for more collaborations.
I also look forward for more collaboration. Central Asia is very important, and it's very important to Europe as well. So thank you
very much. Have a nice day. Thank you. Bye.
Same to you. Bye-bye.